The night my brother made his toast, I was standing near the back of the reception hall holding a glass of champagne I hadn't touched. He had the microphone. He always had the microphone. And of course, he said, grinning at the 300 people seated in front of him, I have to acknowledge my little sister, who flew all the way out here from, what is it you do again? Babysitting? Teaching kids to finger paint? He laughed. The room laughed. My new sister-in-law laughed the loudest. We love you anyway, sweetheart. Even if your biggest career achievement is potty training other people's kids. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just stood there with that warm champagne in my hand and thought, he has no idea. He really didn't. Because sitting in my email drafts at that exact moment, timestamped 6:47 p.m., unsent, was the preliminary decision letter on his company's $2.3 million SBA loan application, and I was the one who had to sign it. Let me back up, because this story doesn't start at a wedding. It starts 22 years earlier, in the back seat of a station wagon, driving away from my grandfather's funeral. When my brother turned to me, I was 9, he was 14, and said, "You know you're adopted, right?" I wasn't. He made it up. But I didn't know that for 6 more years, and those 6 years did something to me that I still can't fully name. My brother's name is Richard, but everyone calls him Rich. Which suits him. He has always moved through the world like someone who expects it to get out of his way. He's the kind of man who sends his steak back twice, not because it's wrong, but because he can. He played lacrosse in college, drives a car that costs more than some people's mortgages, and has never once in his adult life asked how someone else was doing, and actually waited for the answer. Our mother was the original architect of this. She had 2 children, and 2 completely different visions for what they would become. Rich was going to be a businessman, a deal maker. He was going to carry the family name somewhere worth carrying it. And me, I was the soft one, the sensitive one. The one who cried at commercials and wanted to be a teacher and therefore, in her worldview, had somewhat tragically failed to launch. You could do more, she told me the summer after I graduated with my education degree. We were sitting in her kitchen. She was reorganizing a cabinet that didn't need reorganizing. You're smart enough for law school. You're smart enough for medicine, but you want to go teach 3rd grade. I want to teach, I said. I'm good at it. She closed the cabinet. Good at it doesn't pay the bills, sweetheart. I paid my bills fine. I always have. I got my first teaching job in Baltimore. 4th grade, public school, Title I district. 41 kids on the roster. 1 functioning projector between 2 classrooms. I bought supplies out of my own pocket from August through May, and I would do it again tomorrow. Those kids taught me more about patience and creativity and the specific, unreasonable joy of watching someone understand something for the first time than any graduate program ever could. After 4 years, I went back to school part-time and got my master's in education policy. Then, I took a position at the Maryland State Department of Education. Then, I moved up. I was deliberate and I was quiet about it, because I had learned early that announcing ambition in my family was like painting a target on your back. By 31, I was a senior loan and grant review officer for a federal state education partnership program. My office processed applications for schools, educational nonprofits, and small businesses in the education sector. We approved funding. We denied funding. We made recommendations that moved millions of dollars. Rich didn't know any of this. He knew I worked for the government, something with schools. He said it the way you'd say something with boats about a person who drives a ferry. Technically accurate, completely dismissive. I didn't correct him. I stopped correcting him years ago. He announced the engagement on Christmas Eve. Her name is Tiffany, and she is not a bad person. I want to say that clearly. She has never been unkind to me personally. She just laughs at his jokes, including the ones about me, and I think she has decided that this is part of what love requires. Maybe it is. I don't know her marriage. The wedding was in June. Annapolis. The venue was a restored waterfront property that rented for something like $18,000 for the weekend. And my mother had co-signed the deposit, which I also didn't know until later. I flew in from D.C. on Friday evening. My mother hugged me at the door of the rehearsal dinner and said, "You look tired," which is her way of saying hello. Rich shook my hand like I was a colleague he'd met once at a conference. Tiffany said my dress was cute. I sat through the dinner. I ate the salmon. I listened to Rich hold court at the head of the table about his latest venture, a tutoring company actually, which was the specific irony that had been following me around for about 4 months at that point. Rich had started the company 2 years earlier. Educational enrichment, he called it, test prep, private tutoring, summer acceleration programs, the kind of thing that costs $400 a session and markets itself to families who already have every advantage and want more of them. He was good at the business side. He hired curriculum people to handle the actual educational content, because Rich had never spent a single day in a classroom and had no interest in starting. But the company was scaling, and to scale he needed capital, and so he had applied for an SBA loan under a federal education initiative, a program specifically designed to expand access to quality educational services in underserved communities. His application had been sitting in my queue for 4 months. I need you to understand something. I did not go looking for this. His application came to my office through the normal routing process. I saw the company name first, then the owner name. I sat completely still for about 45 seconds, then I pulled up the full file. And what I found was not good. The application included a community impact statement claiming the company served a majority of Title I school districts. The financial projections referenced partnerships with 3 Baltimore City public schools. The business plan described scholarship programs for low-income students that would constitute, per their own documents, at least 30% of their client base. I spent 3 weeks requesting supporting documentation. What came back was thin. 2 of the 3 school partnerships were informal emails, not contracts. The scholarship program existed on paper, with no evidence of implementation. The client demographic data did not match the claims in the impact statement. This was not a federal fraud case. I want to be clear about that. It was an application that significantly overstated its community benefit profile to qualify for a program it didn't actually fit. It was the kind of thing that happens more than the public knows. Companies that understand how to speak the language of impact without doing the work of it. My job was to evaluate the application on its merits against program criteria. That's it. The relationship to the applicant was a conflict of interest I disclosed immediately to my supervisor. She reviewed my preliminary findings, agreed with my assessment, and assigned a colleague to do the final review with me as a technical advisor. Standard protocol. The preliminary decision, as of the Friday night of Rich's rehearsal dinner, was a denial with a formal deficiency notice, meaning he had 60 days to resubmit with corrected documentation, but the current application did not qualify. He didn't know any of this yet. The letter hadn't been sent. We were waiting for a final supervisory sign-off that was scheduled for the following Monday. So I sat at his rehearsal dinner, and I listened to him talk about his education company and his community partnerships, and how he was really making a difference for these kids. And I ate my salmon, and I did not say a word. The wedding was beautiful. Genuinely. The ceremony was on the water, and the light was the kind of gold that makes everything look like it's already a memory. I cried a little, which surprised me. I think I was crying for something else. The reception was in a tent on the lawn, round tables with white flowers and candles everywhere. The kind of event that costs more per guest than some families spend on groceries in a month, which I noted not with judgment but with the specific awareness of someone who spent years watching kids come to school without breakfast. I was at the family table, which meant I was close enough to hear Rich's best man toast, which was fine, and his college roommate's toast, which was funny, and then Rich himself picked up the microphone to say a few words to his guests. He talked about Tiffany. He talked about his journey. He talked about his company and how it was changing the landscape of education in America, and I watched people nod and clink glasses. Then he talked about family. He thanked our mother, who dabbed her eyes beautifully. He mentioned our late father with exactly the right amount of gravity, and then he turned to where I was sitting. And of course, he said, my little sister. Here is the thing about that moment. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't even particularly angry. I was just present. Very, very present. I could feel the exact weight of the champagne flute in my hand. I could see the way the candlelight hit the table. I was calm the way you get calm, When you've been waiting for something for a very long time and you finally accepted that it's here. She works for the government, he said. Something with schools, he chuckled. Honestly, I'm still not totally sure what she does. Something with paperwork. She's always been more of a background person. He raised his glass in my direction. To the background people. The table raised their glasses. My mother smiled. Someone laughed. Someone laughed. I raised my glass. I smiled. And then I set my glass down on the table and I thought, Monday. Monday came. I was at my desk by 7:45. The supervisory sign-off was in my inbox by 9. I reviewed the final determination letter one more time. Standard language. Clear reasoning. Deficiency notice attached. 60-day resubmission window explained. And I submitted it for sending at 9:17 a.m. Rich got the letter electronically the next morning. He called my cell phone at 11:04 a.m. I let it go to voicemail. Hey, it's me. I just got this letter from your department about the loan. I need you to call me back. There's clearly been a mix-up or something. Call me. I called him back at 2 p.m. from my office, door closed. Hey, I said. What is this letter? He said. What is this letter? He said. He didn't say hello. It's a preliminary determination of denial for your loan application, I said. With a deficiency notice, it means your application as submitted doesn't meet the program criteria, but you have 60 days to resubmit with corrected documentation. I know what it says. I need to know why. The letter explains the specific deficiencies. The community impact claims in your application weren't supported by the documentation provided. Silence. I need you to fix this, he said. I waited a beat. I can't do that, Rich. You work there. This is your department. I disclosed the conflict of interest when your application entered my queue. A colleague conducted the review. My role was advisory only. I can't influence the outcome. You could have flagged it. You could have told me. Disclosing an active application to the applicant would have been a federal ethics violation. He didn't care about the money. One of my colleagues said to me later, after I'd explained the whole thing over coffee, he cared that you had power he didn't know about. She was right. I could hear it in his voice. Not panic about the loan, but something older and stranger. The specific shock of realizing his mental model of me had been completely wrong. This is going to cost me, he said. Do you understand that? I have investors who were counting on this. I understand. I'm sorry the timing is difficult. You're sorry. His voice changed. You know what's funny? I stood up at my wedding and talked about you. I was nice to you. I let that sit there and the air between us for a moment. You called me a background person, I said, in front of 300 people. He didn't have anything to say to that. You have 60 days to resubmit, I said. The deficiency notice explains exactly what documentation you'd need. If you want to meet program criteria, you'd need to either scale back the community impact claims to match your actual client demographics, or genuinely implement the scholarship program at the percentage you described. Either is possible. I'd recommend the second option. It would actually help some kids. He hung up. My mother called an hour later. He's very upset, she said. I know. This puts him in a very difficult position with his investors. I understand that. Is there anything you could do? No, I said. There isn't. The decision was made by a colleague. It's procedurally sound. If he resubmits with accurate documentation, the application will be reviewed on its merits. She was quiet for a moment. You could have warned him. I could have committed a federal ethics violation. No, I couldn't. You know what I mean, Mom? I took a breath. His application claimed he was serving communities that the data shows he wasn't actually serving. The program exists specifically to fund businesses that expand educational access for kids who need it most. He was asking for money earmarked for those kids. I didn't deny his application. A colleague did, following protocol, because the claims didn't hold up. Another silence. I know you think what I do is paperwork, I said, but those criteria exist because the money has to go somewhere real. It's supposed to go to places that are actually trying. She didn't respond to that. She told me she hoped Rich and I could work things out. She said family was important. She said she'd talk to him. I said okay, and I meant it, and I sat for a while after we hung up looking out the window at the parking lot behind my building, thinking about a kid I'd had in my 4th grade class in Baltimore, who used to fall asleep after lunch because he'd been up since 5, helping his grandmother open her corner store. And how hard he worked anyway, every single day, and how that work looked to someone who wasn't paying attention. Rich did resubmit. 5 weeks later, the new application was different, scaled back. The community impact claims matched the actual client data. The school partnership language was corrected to reflect informal relationships rather than formal contracts. The scholarship program was described accurately as aspirational, not implemented. It didn't qualify for the program. He applied instead for a different SBA loan product, a standard small business growth loan with no community benefit requirements. That application went to a different office entirely. I have no idea what happened with it. We haven't talked since the phone call. My mother texted me last month to say that Rich was doing well and that she hoped I'd come for Thanksgiving. I haven't decided yet. What I think about sometimes is that toast. The way he stood up in front of all those people who mattered to him and used me as a punchline. Confident and easy. The way you're confident and easy about something you've never once had to examine. The background people. Said like it was affectionate. Said like it was true. I think about the fact that he built a company with the word education in its name, and never once asked me, the person in his family who had actually spent years in classrooms, who had then spent years studying how education policy worked and what funding did and didn't reach kids who needed it. He never once asked me what I thought. Not because he didn't value my opinion, because the category I lived in, for him, didn't contain opinions worth having. He cared about hierarchy. I understand that now in a way I couldn't have named when I was 9 years old in that station wagon. Hearing that I wasn't really part of the family. He needed me to be less. Because if I was less, the order of things made sense. The order of things doesn't make sense. It never did. The day after the loan denial letter went out, I had a meeting with a small nonprofit in Prince George's County. 3 women who had started an after-school tutoring program out of a church basement 4 years ago. They served about 120 kids, almost all of them from Title I schools, almost all of them reading below grade level when they walked in. Their application was clean. Every claim matched. Every document was there. The client demographic data was meticulous. We approved their application for $180,000. The woman who ran the program shook my hand twice. She said, "You have no idea what this means." She was right. I had some idea, but not the full shape of it. That's the thing about the work. You send the letter, and then life continues on the other side of it and you mostly don't see it. I thought about her on the drive home. I thought about the 120 kids. I thought about my brother's toast. The background people, he said. I drove home through the DC traffic with the windows down and the early summer air coming in, and I thought, yes, we are. We are the background people. We're the ones in the room that nobody's looking at, moving money toward kids who need it and away from applications that don't mean what they say they mean. We're the ones who know what the words actually mean. He stood at the front of the room with the microphone. The checkmate was already set. I just hadn't played it yet. I thought a lot about what Rich actually lost that day, and I don't mean the loan. The loan was a process. It had a 60-day resubmission window. It had a path forward if he chose to walk it honestly. What he lost was something that doesn't have a resubmission window. The comfortable fiction that I was someone he didn't have to take seriously. He'd been carrying that fiction for a long time. We both had in different ways. He carried it like a privilege. I carried it like a weavelage. I carried it like a weight. And the strange thing is, I think the weight actually helped me. When no one is watching you, when you've been filed under background, you get to build things quietly. You get to become something without anyone tracking it, or competing with it, or trying to redirect it. Rich spent his whole life performing his ambition for an audience. I just did the work. That's not a judgment. That's just what happened. What I've come to understand, slowly, over years, not in some sudden flash, is that the way people treat you is almost always about the story they're telling about themselves. Rich needed me to be less because his whole sense of himself required a clear hierarchy. He needed to be the serious one, the successful one, the one who made it. If I made it too, in my own way, on my own terms, the story got complicated. So he simplified it. He made me the punchline. He made me the babysitter. And I let him. Not because I was weak, because I understood, somewhere deep and patient in myself, that the truth has a way of becoming visible without you having to announce it. You just have to keep doing the work. You have to stay in the room. The hardest part wasn't the phone call after the denial letter. It wasn't my mother asking if I could have warned him. The hardest part was sitting at that wedding table and watching him describe his education company. This company that used the language of equity and access and impact. And knowing what I knew, knowing that the application on my desk didn't match the speech coming out of his mouth, knowing that the money he was asking for was supposed to go to kids who actually needed it, and that the gap between what he claimed and what he'd built was real and documented and mine to account for. That's the part nobody sees in these stories. The actual weight of the decision. It wasn't satisfying to deny that application. It was just correct. There's a difference. I think about the 3 women in Prince George's County a lot. Their application was the same amount of work to process as Rich's. It got approved. 120 kids got something real because the paperwork matched the reality. That's the whole job. That's what it's always been. Making sure the words mean what they say they mean. Rich called his company an education company. He wasn't wrong, exactly. But he was talking about education the way someone talks about a neighborhood they've driven through once. He knew the geography. He didn't know the people. I spent 4 years knowing the people. That's where the authority comes from. Not the title. Not the office. Not the federal program acronyms. The authority comes from having sat at a small desk in a loud classroom and understood, in your body, what it costs a kid to try when everything around him is telling him not to bother. He couldn't see that. I don't think he ever will. And I've made my peace with that too. Some people need you to be small. You can spend your whole life trying to change that, or you can just keep growing and let the distance speak for itself. The checkmate was never about him. It was about becoming someone who knew the difference between words and truth, and having the patience to wait until it mattered.